Cool. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, cool. So, in that way, yeah, by the way, when on your masters, how did you approach actually the process of choosing your supervisors and the projects?
So I did something which one of my friends did for her bachelor's, and I also kind of did for my bachelor's. I knew I wanted to go to the quantum optics department, but I didn't really know per se which supervisor. So I basically sent an email to the three professors I was interested in. So that's Martin van Exter, Wolfgang Löffler, and Michiel de Dood. And I asked if there was like one day where I could just visit all of their groups. So basically that's what we did. So I came out, and then you also have like the PhD students to tell you about what they do, and you kind of meet everyone already. I also did that for my bachelor's project, but then I only went to the group of Jan van Ruitenbeek. And with that, you kind of already get a feeling how is your supervisor, like what type of person is he, and you kind of already know them from your courses, but it's a very different environment. So just to talk to them one-on-one is a really good indication, because if it doesn't click, you will know very fast.
How important is that to you?
The most important thing. I think it's more important than the actual project, because if you don't have a bond with your supervisor, it's just really, it's going to be bad. I've seen it with other students. I fortunately never had it, but I think it's the most important thing to really have a connection with your supervisor.
And do you think, for example, during these times, so for students to find the right person for them, how actually harder would it be for them because of the online thing?
I think it would be much harder, because through the screen it's like you act a little bit different, and I'm not sure how you feel about video conferencing, but it's kind of like you already see yourself, so you get a little bit distracted about that. And yeah, it's a little bit more uptight, and you don't get then you just talk to them and you don't really get the overall feeling of the place itself. And that I think you would miss, and so I think it would be more difficult, but even then, I think meeting up with your supervisor beforehand, even though it's online, is a very smart thing to do. Just to get a feeling like, okay, this is some person I can actually work with. Because if it's really bad, if there's like no connection, you will feel it in half an hour. That's even through the screen.
I see. So what would you advise to people who actually, who are faced with the choice of the project?
First of all, be proactive. I think that's the most important thing. You have to go to people to say, I'm really interested in what you're doing, can we talk about it? Because that's what everybody likes. Like a proactive student is like the best student you want to have. So that's the most important thing, and just keep in mind that the supervisor is going to be very important. Even though it's a PhD supervisor, meet with the PhD students as well. Also, if you already know a little bit PhD students or maybe master students who are 1 year above you, contact them, ask like, how did you find these people? How did you think the supervision went? Like, do you think it would fit with me? I think that's, and then of course the project itself is also important. Like, do I still think don't go into a direction you really don't like. But I think it's definitely a second to the supervisor. So, but most importantly, be proactive and ask questions and say, I'm really interested. Can we actually meet? Can we meet online, or would it be at all possible to come by once?
Yeah, thanks. That's valuable advice. And so let's talk a bit about the city. So as far as I understood, you did your bachelor's here.
Yeah.
So you have lived here for quite a long time, I think.
I didn't start living here before halfway my master's.
Okay. So where did you live then?
I still live with my parents for 4 years.
Okay. So are they like in the suburbs or?
So it's the suburbs, but it's the suburbs of Rotterdam. So I had to travel like 3 hours a day, like from place to place and back.
That's so much.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, but on the other hand, you have probably already read all of the books that you wanted. And
I mean,
some
I
other
also
stuff.
have breakfast in the train every morning before. Like, I mean, then you just like wake up. You already made your breakfast the evening before, and then you just go. So, but
Yeah,
it was mostly through my bachelor's, yeah. So through all of my bachelor's and my first year of my master's.
Okay, and but then you have actually moved here.
Yeah.
So maybe you could, if you're comfortable with that, tell us a bit about how were you looking for housing? What was your housing situation?
So I think at the beginning of my master's I signed up for Duo because I'm a Dutch citizen, so that's kind of easy for me. And before that, one of my friends who was still living in Leiden but studying in Amsterdam was doing his project in Japan, so he would be gone for half a year. So he didn't want to give up his room, and he was able to sublet it to me. So I stayed there. So that's actually the black flats at Wassenaarse. So I stayed there for almost for more than half a year, for I guess 6 months or something. And then because they're building new flats, and then in June of that year a new flat came up, and I applied for that one. And because it's like a flat in one go, you have a very high probability that you actually get a room. So that was actually how I got it. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to get one.
So it was just built and you were like, well, let me move in.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, quite
I mean,
lucky.
that's when they have 120 rooms open in one go. So then like the first 120 people get a room.
Okay, yeah, that was a lucky thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you like Leiden as a city in general?
I really like it because it doesn't feel like a massive city. It's quite cozy, so that's really really nice.
Yeah, and you had the opportunity to experience it before the lockdowns.
Yeah, a little bit. So in the sense that you would go out for drinks with your colleagues, so that mostly that, and also like with your friends. But I mean, I didn't go out that much. Like, not really much of the party lifestyle, to be honest.
Okay, and okay, thanks. And regarding the program, so how do you feel it prepared you in terms of soft and hard skills for your further research and like adult life, something like that?
I think the hard skills are fine. I don't think that's the problem. The soft skills, on the other hand, I think a little bit more about how, because even in the bachelor thesis writing isn't really that much of a thing, and you learn a lot by doing it, of course, but it's still like it's always the process that nobody likes, and is always a little bit like it always takes longer than you think, and it's just this really really annoying thing. And I think if you have a little bit more about that would really help. And I think sometimes, and maybe it's also because you're working, like if you're working together, you're working on your homework basically. So it doesn't really, like, you don't have that much conversation sometimes about just, you know, the soft skills or the soft parts of your university life. I don't always think like if we come away from here and you would go to a company that you're like you're ready for company politics or whatever. I don't really think that we always that you really get that from your scientific master.
And has APS contributed to that?
Not really. I mean, I'm not sure how it is for you guys, but mine was still given by Tjerk Oosterkamp, and it was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of on being a scientist mixed through, and we had some people talking about what they used to do, so what companies they work. So you kind of get a little bit more of a perspective of what is out there, but it doesn't really give you like soft skills. It's more you get information, but you don't train anything else.
So what would you like to have seen in that course?
I'm not sure if it's like if it could be by the course itself, but it's really difficult to say how you would change it, because it's a soft skill, so it's very difficult to define and to actually teach. But I think it always helps to maybe create an environment where you can talk about certain things that you have found out or you have figured out, or also a little bit more from the people who maybe are working at companies. But yeah, that's a really difficult thing to solve, I guess.
Yeah, for example, did you have did you have assignments in your courses which required to work in at least pairs or even groups of people?
Yeah, and I'm really used to the fact that if we have homework, we work in groups, like from the bachelor on, because I figured out pretty fast that doing homework on my own was not really going to happen. So yeah, I always work together in groups.
And how that helps to develop the soft skills?
I mean, you have to do a lot of communication. You have to formulate your problems that you have. And I think that's a very important soft skill to have, and also just to communicate like just what you want to say, and really like making sure that other people understand exactly what you mean is always a very difficult thing to do. And that's something which you will train indirectly through all of your masters as well. But I think it's like these soft skills that you have, but you don't always realize that you have them. Because they're very, I mean, you just do it through your coursework, so it's incredibly subtle.
But for example, there are definitely skills that we do not possess, even if we are not aware of them. So how can we actually develop them?
Yeah, that would be, that's something probably for academic professionals to say. Okay, like these are things to see how you can basically make an assignment where this skill is becoming very important. But exactly how I wouldn't imagine right now.
And in your year, was IPS also about a project that you do in a group?
Yeah.
And it still didn't help.
No, but I mean, it's like, I mean, you think about a lot of things, but you do it once. And I think my friend, so we were like with 5 people, and me and someone else were very involved in it and very invested, and we did a lot because we also like went to the schools together afterwards. And I think you learn a lot of that, because also if you have this stand on a conference and then you have to talk to people and then you have to basically sell your product, and that's something you learn a lot about. Like you learn a lot from. And but I mean, others who are not like very inclined to those sort of things, they will back out pretty easily, and that's something you always get. And I don't think like if you have students who really don't want to do it, you can't make them in the end.
Yeah, that's why they make this course compulsory.
Yeah. I mean, of course, but I mean, even then, there are people who are more forward and people who are more like, okay, I will just like edit the video in the end, for example.
Yes, sir.
So relatable. Okay. Okay, so in that case, what is about the master's program that you particularly like, and what is one thing that you would like to improve?
About the masters as well?
Yes.
I mean, I really like I really like that you have the courses first and then you do your project afterward, because like the other way around is, or at the same time, can be a little bit annoying. And it also gives you a lot of groundwork to do your projects. I'm not really sure. I mean, the one thing I would change is the amount of homework, but that's a very personal pet peeve of mine. I really don't like the compulsory homework for a lot of courses, especially the reasoning behind it. I am always a little bit annoyed if they say, okay, you have to do homework, because apparently if you don't do homework, then if you don't give homework, then the grades will be bad. And I'm like, whose problem is that, right? So I think there's already changing again about if homework is compulsory and that you can only give it with a bonus, for example. I mean, there are courses where it's important. I mean, for theory of general relativity, probably you will need to have homework because you can't really test it in an exam. And that's, in my opinion, the only correct way, the only correct argument to have homework. for
Ah,
a grade.
What about the homework in mechanical materials then?
I mean, that's the, they do that instead of the exam in the end. And I think that's fine.
Mhm.
But to have homework for 50% and an exam for 50%, I think is really excessive.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, thank you for sharing that. And what is the advice that you would give a prospective student who chooses, who could consider choosing program?
I mean, I would encourage it a lot. And what I really like about quantum matter and optics is because you can do it very diverse. You can go a little bit more into the theoretical side if you don't like it like me. You can go into completely an experimental direction, and there's just a lot of overlap and difference. And you also have a lot of connections to where you can also go to another university and you can do a course there, or you can work together with them in a project. And I think I just love the diversity, and it's so big and you can do so many different things. So I mean, that's also kind of intimidating because it's not very well defined anymore, but I think it gives freedom to every person, and that's what I really like about it. But yeah, and my advice is just to, like, if you want to do it, then just go for it. Like, put the work in, and then everything will be fine. I mean, if you're enthusiastic about it, then it's going to be fine.
Okay, thank you. So we kind of conclude with the main part of the interview, and yeah, of course we can ask more questions.
I think so too. Just wondering, have you been interviewed more often?
Not that much.
No, okay, because you're really giving these one-liners that are like a perfect summary of the point you're trying to get across. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah, it's like I was looking at you, and I have already seen that frame that will make it into our video with like that even one sentence particularly. I had it like, I know, 3 times maybe during this, and that's like just perfect. That's amazing, really.
I'm really happy.
It's pretty rare. We didn't get that as much with other people. Yeah, I think should we wrap up the interview part?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah,
Do you
and
have any more questions? Do you have anything more to say?
yeah, sure.
No, I think.
Thank you so much. That was really useful.
I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah, especially perspective of a graduate. Yeah, a student who
Yeah.
has graduated already.